Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 19 of Corporate Cardboard. If you're not familiar with what Corporate Cardboard is, it is a board game variety show where we talk about a variety of things, board games we've been playing, we touch on some crowdfunding, favorite mechanisms, favorite components, and a lot more. As usual, I'm joined by my co-host Mackenzie from Side Game. Mackenzie, how are you today?
I'm doing great. We've already had a wonderful morning, and we're just going to continue that talking about games. Let's do this.
Yeah, as Mackenzie alluded to, we've just finished talking about the Dice Tower nominations, just giving some initial thoughts on who we think is going to win each category. So be sure to check out that video on Mackenzie's channel. We've literally just finished recording it. So yeah, leave a comment and let us know what you think should win each category. But let's get straight into the show. And we start off, as always, with what we've been playing. So Mackenzie, take it away.
All right, the first game that I want to talk about is Perseverance Castaway Chronicles, specifically Episode 1. It's a large Mind Clash production that is, as you imagine, a huge, heavy experience rules-wise, with front-loading all that information, but in classic Mind Clash faction, the graphic design as well as the iconography is so nice when it comes to actually learning and playing the game. It's one of the things that I really appreciate from this company is, yes, it's a heavy, complicated game, but the more you play it, after a couple of rounds, it clicks and it's going to be something that you're excited to play more and more. Now, this one fits that bill. I've only played Episode 1 so far, which has you playing as a cruise ship. And the cruise ship has crashed onto this island in the middle of nowhere, and it's not on any of the maps. It's a land of the lost sort of situation. And so all of the people that are there now have to survive. You're going to be building settlements, and ideally, you want to be elected the next leader of this population of people there. In Perseverance, it is a dice drafting game. First and foremost, you have a pool of dice. You're going to take one, use it to activate a worker placement spot on the board. So you use it, use the symbol. Now, this is from episode 2 here with the exploration, but the episode 1 more of has just the worker placement spots on a bottom half of a board. But as you play the game, you're going to be trying to do some area control by putting up these different spires around these bottom areas. You also are going to be trying to potentially ward off these terrible creatures in the form of dinosaurs. And so you have to decide when and where to place different traps, walls, protections, where to put out your soldiers to take down these enemies that are going to be advancing towards you. And through fighting, you can gain a variety of different victory points. Yes, so this is our episode 1 here. We have 3 main areas in this game. You have your personal player board where you're going to be gathering resources. You have a special ability. You have the bottom area where the actual settlement is. And then you have the area further on that, and that's where the dinosaurs are going to be populating. When a space fills entirely with dinosaurs, then combat happens, which is you trigger any traps and potentially take out some dinosaurs, or walls will potentially take out dinosaurs, and then any soldiers will fight. And fighting is really cool. The game wants you to actually fight because there's a reward system for if you do. Based on how many people die, how many dinos you defeat, the different pieces you have in the areas, how many people you protect. There's a variety of ways to gain followers, which are likes. They're like little thumbs. They love you. So it's kind of funny. You're like, ooh, like my status the whole time. And so you're trying to mitigate and manage these different things and then spend your valor and your protection resource in order to gain these combat rewards. So there's a rewards for doing pretty much everything in the game. And I really like that about it. But it's what venues and what paths that you're going to go into that are the interesting decisions. And I really like the area control as well. The game is over after 2 of these big voting phases, where one phase, when all the dice run out, you'll trigger the effect and then repopulate the dice. And if you're playing with 2, it's 2 phases. If you're playing with 3, it's 3. But you'll have this cycle, this build up towards this point scoring area, and then see how well you do based on the different pieces that you have. The pieces are not only the settlements, but also your dice and your leader. And so there's a lot of things to think about, and placement is pretty critical in this game. So I love this one so far. I'm having a great time with it, but I'm very excited to see what part 2 brings, because now you have exploration. There'll be these tiles on the board that you'll go out to and you'll send dice to, and some more upgrades on your leaders. So a lot more upgrades towards yourself as opposed to the board. And so it's a lot more control as to what you are doing. So I'm curious to see how this plays out, but I'm curious what your thoughts are on this game in general. What do you think about a 2-part gaming experience like this?
Well, I wasn't quite sure to make of it actually, because I remember this game being initially advertised, God, maybe even a couple of years ago now, and I think it might have even made my most anticipated for last year, maybe.
Mhm.
And it didn't come out, and it was delayed until, well, more recently. I wasn't really quite sure what the 2 parts entailed. I mean, is one version just a more advanced version of the other, or is there completely different mechanisms, or?
So it has some shared mechanisms, and that's seen through the components as well. A lot of the components have this marking that say you use this in episode 1 or you use this in episode 2. But there are a lot of shared ideas and themes and mechanisms. In the first portion, a lot of the emphasis is put onto the area control and preparing for this combat, where the second one has to do with the exploration. Have not played the second one yet, so I can't speak much to it, but you are still using some of the same mechanisms of you'll have a dice pool, you're using those dice for resources. The resources are the same from episode to episode. And then you also have the dinosaur miniatures that will populate the board. You'll be able to attack and defeat. So you do have some carryover when it comes to the mechanisms, but it looks like the core experience is a little bit different. I would compare this something to like Century Spice Road, where a lot of the components are similar and you're doing some of the same conversion things, but at its core, the system is a little bit different in what you're actually trying to achieve with these things. So I think that there is a big enough difference, but as mentioned before, haven't played the second one. And that's one thing that I'm struggling with here is I like this idea of having these bridging games, but Mind Clash games are pretty beefy to learn. They're pretty beefy to play. And so I'm not sure if this is one that if I were to make this multi-game with multi-rule sets, I don't know if I'd make it this depth or this deep of a game, this complicated. What do you think about that?
No, yeah, I completely agree. I wonder what the actual strategy was, or what they were thinking when they did this. I mean, do you think it's some kind of cost-cutting thing, trying to get both games out in one box, or I don't really know.
I think that it probably is a design challenge. That's what I'm thinking when I look at the game like this. Like, I don't think that this is Mind Clash games. They're kickstarting stuff. They can afford to produce these crazy components. As you can see, this game has like hundreds of miniatures and metal components galore that were all unlocked via the Kickstarter. So I don't think money has anything to do with it, but I think crafting a unique experience is what they were going for. And I think they've done it. I've heard a lot of positive things about people playing the campaign where you play both games back to back, and that's awesome. The fact that it works and it works well is huge testament to design. And so I'm curious to see what 3 and 4 look like. Are they going to further develop this village that is exploring? There's a temple that's out in the wilderness, so maybe that has to do with it, finding the native people to this island and seeing how you interact with them. I'm curious to see how it plays out. The biggest thing that was funny to me is every time a game comes into our library, I try to learn it as soon as possible and play it. This has been one that's been taking me a while to learn and play. It's the only unplayed game in our entire library because it's just such a tank, and I've had to learn multi-rule sets and get the games played, but I should be okay. I'm planning on playing it tomorrow, the second part. That's the plan.
Well, it's got a cool theme. I mean, how does the combat resolve?
So the combat is pretty cool. It's actually one of my favorite features here, where you are doing a lot of preparation, something similar to a tower defense game, where you're setting soldiers into areas. You are putting out traps, and eventually those areas will get populated with creatures, and then you'll resolve them in a specific order. First, you do the traps. You'll roll a trap die, and you're trying to match the symbols on the traps to potentially take out creatures. If they match, excellent. You take them out, and you'll get some victory points for doing so. And then you'll also potentially could fail that trap, though, but you'll still get points out of it. So you always get something for setting traps. And then your walls will trigger, which is another defensive measure that's always consistent. So the earlier you get them out, the better. And then we move on to the soldiers, which will be firing at each other. So you've got some cool choices when it comes to the levels, and then based on how well you do in that combat, you're going to use your resources to purchase these abilities for extra scoring, resources, etc., based on how well you did in that combat. So maybe the number of walls and traps you had in the combat, the number of people that you protected, the number of dinosaurs that you actually took out, or the number of characters that you had that were killed in that combat. So there's some different strategies based on that. I had played a game, last game we played, one of the players, they purposely went on this huge crusade, sent out all these people just hoping to die, and they did. So they were able to get a lot of victory points in like the last turn of the game, and they didn't need to recur any of their soldiers back because game was over. So this was like the perfect time to actually have them go on a kamikaze strike. So got some cool choices here. I really do like the combat in this game.
Cool. And what's your overall initial rating? If you had to give it
overall initial rating, I think I have it right now at a 7. I think it is good. I think it's fun. I think it's mechanically sound. I'm not sure if I would pick this over other games in the Mind Clash catalog or even games at this similar weight, but I do think it is fun. It's one that I am going to play more of and I'm going to look more into. It's fun. It's fun. I really like it. There's a lot of things that I do enjoy about it.
Cool. Well, yeah, I mean, looks good. I mean, they always have big hit games and another heavy one, but I'll be willing to give this one a go, and I'm glad to hear it's a quality design as well. So that is Perseverance, Castaway Chronicles. just a quick comment here from Best of Star Trek. Thanks for joining us. Glad to have you with us. Or sorry, a bit of lag on my computer, but there we go. Okay, so my first game that I've been playing is, and I had plenty to choose from this month, Mackenzie, because there's been a bit of a gap between our last episode, so I was spoiled for choice. But my first one is Fiori by Rainer Knizia. So this one is, I think, one of his most recent designs, if not his most recent design, at least available here in the UK. This one is a pretty abstract point salad style game that uses drafting, and it takes place on this huge board here with all these different kind of mini games going on at the same time. And all you do on your turn in this one is you're going to draft one of your 5 cards you start with, then you're going to pass them on to your neighbor. They're going to take their draft and so on until everyone wants to play down to 1 card. And basically each card corresponds to a different section of the board here. So at the top left section here, we have these chains of your color, because each time you do, you're going to get an extra point. So creative 1, you get 1 point, and then 2, 2 points, 3, 3 points, and so on. But additionally, you want to be trying to get different types of these symbols, because if you get the first to get all the 4 different symbols, you get 20 points, and then 15, and then 10, and then 5. So there's different kind of things you need to go on, not letting people get big chains, but also increasing your chains, and also getting a kind of diverse amount of these symbols to get those bonus points. You got the C symbol down here, or this key chart, where you're trying to get your symbols next to each other as the other one, but this one you're just going to get the straight up face amount of points, but for each one that you're connected to. So again, the longer the chain, the more points you're going to get. You've got these 2 different sections down here, which work in pretty much the same way, where you build up these pyramids of colors. But each time a little triangle was made, then not only do you score the points, but also the people below you will score the points in relation to where they are in that pyramid. And again, if you get all the different symbols, you can get those bonus 20 points. And finally, you've got this kind of boat and almost goods section, where this goods section you're trying to load up with these different types of goods. And again, if you get all the different ones, you're going to get the bonus points, but also you can potentially award your opponents more points than you get yourself, which will give you potions. And this is another one of those games like Witchstone was last year, which I did rave about, where you get these kind of chain reactions of combos. So you might do one thing, which will give you another action, which will give you another thing, and so on. And you're basically trying to get as many points as you can, as quickly as you can. And I just think this game works very well. I mean, all the different mini games are so simple to understand, but the fact that you are dictated by the actual drafting of the cards themselves makes the decisions quite crunchy, because you want to do everything, and also you want to stop other people from doing certain things. You know, if you know a card's going to be great for your opponent, then you want to be making sure you take that, even if it's going to maybe cost you in return. And that's pretty much all the game consists of, just drafting cards until everybody's placed out a certain amount of these their glass symbols, and then points are going to be calculated at the end. And then that's it, really. So very simple, streamlined Knizia game. One that shares a lot of mechanisms with other Knizia games, but again, with that extra layer of the card drafting to restrict you on what you can do, it just actually comes together very well. Plays in about an hour, and I've been having a really good time with this one. And I've already reviewed it. Be sure to check out my review if you're interested. And it's got quite a bit of praise from me. So that is Fiori. Definitely want to look at if it interests you.
Oh, the card drafting sounds wonderful. It's one of my favorite parts in games like this, especially when there's so many interconnected paths and then seeing how they result. Yeah. Is this similar to Witchstone, where you get rewards for doing certain things early, or is it more just the cross connection between the different areas?
Yeah, so you do get rewards for doing things early, mainly through, again, each of these different mini games have something you can do where if you achieve something before your opponents, you get the 20 points, and the second person will do it will get 15 points, third person 10 points, and they all work in slightly different ways. But the idea is you want to be doing those obviously as quick as you can, and bearing in mind that you want to get those combos, because if you get these combos, you get to draft a card that's kind of put to the side of the board. So it's not from the ones that you actually pass around. There's like a pool of cards that are communally available to all the players, which is quite interesting, because if there's a really good card sat there, you might be thinking, you know what, I'm not going to go for the big punch of points here, but I'll go for that bonus so I can draft another card, and then I can take that reward, and so on. But yeah, point salad galore, but just showers you in points. Lots of dopamine hits, as I said in my review, but I enjoy it a lot. That is Fiori.
Sounds great.
It is. Cool. What else have you been playing then, Mackenzie?
All right. The next game that I want to talk about is One of my favorite games, actually. This is Super Fantasy Brawl. And I want to talk specifically about round 2. So, Super Fantasy Brawl is a skirmish game. It's a 2-player head to head, or it is a 2-on-2 team based game where you have a team of champions that all have their own unique 6 cards. You'll shuffle those cards into a single deck and then use them to activate your different characters. You're restricted to 3 actions on your turn, which are through these cores, and each one has a specific color. You have red, which is aggression, which are more aggro cards, obviously. You have control, and then you have manipulation. So you have these 3 different things. And so you're trying to manage your people, not only to knock out your opponent's creatures, but also in order to score these objectives. And the objectives are where you're going to get the majority of your points. So it's all about positioning and setting up your characters while also trying to get some hits here and there. Super Fantasy Brawl Round 2 recently introduced a doubling of the amount of characters that you can pick from. And this is amazing because I think the original 12 characters were wonderful. But now you have 12 more characters to pick from. You have genies, you have ancient Egyptian creatures, you have forces of nature, you have people with really cool hats. There's just really strange themings they've decided to pick from here. But I think that they're all really cool so far. I've only played 4 unique characters out of these new round 2, but I'm just very excited to try more. Some of the standouts for me have been there's a character called Nicket. He is a set of rabbits that are all inside of this one big hat. And so it's kind of like the Rabbids from Mario, where they pull out and they're throwing these different characters, and they're literally throwing these rabbits around the screen, and they can power up their cards by manipulating their discard pile. And I think that's a great mechanism. It's something you haven't seen in the game. You have a lot of cool overlapping of keywords that showed up in some of the other characters, which make them very interesting and very versatile with how you can play them. But the standout character is Alchemy, and this is the character that I was the most hyped for. It is a genie, and whoa, does this character it's so cool. It's so fun. It doesn't just look cool, it is cool. Alchemy is frail as all get out. It has 6 health, so it can get knocked out by 2 really solid hits. But Alchemy's effects are all in the support genre. Not only can Alchemy play cards to move herself and be able to refresh the other cores that you have at your disposal, so you're able to play multiple cards. Oh my goodness. So you can play multiple red cards in a turn when normally you're restricted to 1, but you also have cards that will distinctly go through shields. Shields are passive effects on your characters that prevent damage from being dealt to you. And in the original game, high shielded characters were characters you just pretty much wrote off like, I'm never going to kill this character. Not a thing anymore with Alchemy. She has this acid rain ability that can destroy shields straight through. Super powerful, and I just love that that is a counter option that's available. And the last thing is the ability of Alchemy when they are upgraded is whenever you kill somebody, you get to upgrade your character, and Alchemy's effect when upgraded gives you an extra action on your turn, which is the ability to do one of your small anytime actions. You can always forfeit one of your colored cores to do a minor effect, an extra movement, a heal, a damage, but just having 4 actions on a turn, even if the 4th action is super weak, is amazing. The extra pivotal positioning is important as all get out. And the last thing that I want to do is a quick anecdote, and that was when I was teaching this game to someone for the first time. I had never played any of these new characters yet, so I was just grabbing 3 random ones, trying them out, saying, hey, let's try this out. And I paired them up with some characters with really high shield values because those were some of the strongest ones from the initial set, and Alchemy happened to be in this set of characters that I used for the first time, and I totally destroyed the opponent I was playing with on total accident because I had set them up for a failure, essentially. I gave them these shielded characters and played these characters that dealt damage to people with shields, and it just felt terrible afterwards. I was like, sorry about that, didn't mean to. I wouldn't say it was a completely smattering. It was 4-5, which is very close because 5 trophies wins the game. But just something to be aware of before you give somebody who's trying this for the first time a random set of cards. Make sure you're not hard countering them. But that's Super Fantasy Brawl. I am so thrilled, having so much fun with this, have not been disappointed, and the wait was worth it. So whole brand new roster of characters. Let's go. Super excited.
Brilliant. And do you think there's still scope to introduce even more characters? Do you think it's going to be
a
continuous trend? Yeah.
Oh, yes. I think that they'll probably introduce more keywords for that. But I think the creativity, there's a lot of creativity. The fact that each character has only 6 cards, I think makes it so that you can do a lot with these cards. There's not going to be repetition. The characters will continue to feel unique, and you have so much to draw from. You have characters from real world locations in the form of Egyptian characters. You have underwater creatures. We've got like an octopus. But even in each of those subgenres, there's a lot to explore. So I'm excited. I'm thrilled, and I just want to play more Super Fantasy Brawl, honestly.
Brilliant. Yeah, there's nothing nicer when you know one of your games is going to be or new content to explore and keep it fresh. So yeah, glad
Yes.
that you're enjoying it. What more can you ask for? Okay, so the second game I want to touch on is a game called First Rat. So First Rat is actually,
What?
I think I see you make a face there. So the game has actually got a bit of buzz in this last week or so. It was on the hotness on
What?
BGG. I think it might just slipped off now. I don't know if it's in the top 20 or not. But this is a pretty lightweight or maybe medium lightweight racing style game. And winners of this game, Virginio Gili. Virginio Gili is known for making more involved Euro games with the Italian designs. So this is a very different pace for Gili. This what's going on in this game for a pretty simple rule set, but ultimately it is some kind of go up the track movement style game, but it works differently than a roller move or something like that. This one, you are either moving one of your rats, I think it's up to 5 spaces, or you can move any number of rats up this track as long as they all end on a different space of the same color. If you land on these spots, you are going to be picking up these different resources. Some will be these light bulbs, which will let you go up a separate track. And when you have certain checkpoints on this track, then you can get victory points based on these little scoring charts that are put out. Some of them will give you resources which you can trade in to contribute towards this this spaceship, which is being built by rats to get to the cheese moon, as you know, as in real life. And some of these tracks slots will let you go around this kind of little tunnel at the bottom of the board. I don't know if I can find a picture of it or not, but basically there's this part at the bottom of the board here where you've got these little rat tokens. They go round and round and round on this track, and you can only go clockwise, but sometimes you can kind of turn right up to here and cut yourself off. Maybe get a permanent ability, or you can unlock more rats to put on the track, and hopefully get right to the top here and get more points by getting them into the spaceship. This might sound crazy, but it's and the other one is to go all the way to the end and put one of your cubes here for scoring. So there's loads of different ways you can get points, and it's kind of another one of those games where you want to be as quick as you can to do everything because points depreciate as you go down. There's a ton of different strategies you can go down. There's also these checkpoints as you go up these tracks where you can buy these different goods from these different characters. So you've got like the frog character, or I think there's a crow as well, one of which you can buy energy drinks for, which will double the output of your resources you received. One of which gives you these bottle caps for endgame scoring, and one of which, I think this little hamster chap here, will give you, again, these other things that will increase your yield of taking resources. So it might say every time you go up the light bulb track, then you get an extra 2 light bulbs. And that's it, really. You're going to keep playing until a certain amount of rats has got to the top of the spaceship, or until somebody has placed I think it's 8 of these point scoring cubes. And that's it. So it takes about 45 minutes to an hour to play, maybe a little bit longer with your first teach. But I wasn't really sure what to expect because, I bought it basically on the credibility of the designer and because it got some high praise early doors. And this actually went down really well with my gaming group. I think when I was teaching it, people weren't so sure. A few raised eyebrows, but within a few turns, everyone was invested and started to really enjoy the game. And I think it's certainly going to be appealing to gamers who play lighter, to family weight games. And I think this is going to be a big hit for this year. And fortunately, I got to quite early before the hype train started taking off. And I think this one could be big. That is First Rat. I enjoyed it.
This is hilarious. So I had never heard of this game. I had never heard of this game in general until you mentioned it, which is awesome because it does sound pretty great, actually. I like that it uses that movement system of trying to maximize how much you're able to move, and the aesthetics are great. I love the theming. This looks cool. What is for people who've played this for the first time? What's been the thing that they've been most excited about?
I think it was the theme went down really well because I think we thought it was funny. But I think it was the idea of the different ways you can score, because there are so many different things you could do, and we all took a very different path. I went for trying to just shoot up the track as quick as I could to try and get to my rats to the spaceship. Some people went for donating parts to the ship itself. Somebody had like a cheese building engine, because another thing you could do was to donate cheese to the reserves. The food reserves. Of course, you need cheese to go to space. So some people got points that way.
Mhm.
And there's also this really cool mechanism where if you climb to these shops, you can either choose to trade in the cheese to get the goods from there, or you can actually steal the benefit, but go right to the bottom of the track. And that went down quite well as well. So I honestly, it was a very well-rounded game, and I thought everybody enjoyed it for what it was. So yeah, it's very nice.
Worth taking a look at, worth giving it a try.
I think so. I think if you want something a bit, something that's easy to teach, but not brainless or not, it's there's still stuff to think about, and you have to prioritize actions and use this kind of current situation of the board to your benefit. Because if you ever share a spot with somebody else, you have to pay them cheese. So it's got this little economy as well. So you can't just land where you want. But no, some of the powers might say you can always share a spot without having to share cheese, or some might say, instead of moving all your rats 1 to 3 spaces, you can move them all 1 to 4 spaces. So there's like little game-breaking things you can use as well, and there's little shortcuts on the board. So, and it has a really good kind of pacing to it, because you start off quite slow, but as you move that thing up that light track, it means that everything below that light track gives more output. So it has this kind of not a catch-up mechanism, but a snowballing mechanism to stop it stalling, stop it getting boring, which is really well done. So mechanically, it works fine and it achieves what it's supposed to. So that is first rat.
Wow, how fun!
Yeah,
totally blindsided me with this one. How cool!
There we go. First rat. What's next, Mackenzie?
All right, the last game I want to talk about is Nemesis Lockdown. So I got to play another game of Nemesis Lockdown, and this was a full player count with all of the players having played some form of Nemesis, or at least watching a playthrough with one new player. But other than that, it was a game where just utter chaos happened. So this is more of anecdotal than it is reviewable, but oh my goodness. So we had finished the game of Nemesis Lockdown. The original Nemesis, and one player survived, and so they were high on life. And this is my friend Tavian, and he came in high on life, like, yeah, let's go. This is like my favorite game. I love this. Awesome. Consistent bad luck, rolling misses on all of his attacks towards these alien creatures, stumbling here and there, and it was so funny to watch how a game can just devolve into this utter nonsense. And the newest player at the table was thinking of this game originally like, wow, this game is hella random. Wow, I'm just not doing so well. And then they look around the table, and this is a sensation that happens a lot. They say, oh, everyone is experiencing this misery and this utter misfortune. And the attitude of the game instantly switched to, oh, this is just how this game is. You're mitigating failure more than you are mitigating success, which is a hilarious thing to think about. And it makes sense. It's a horror setting. You have these characters that have some cool abilities and effects, but ultimately, you're probably not going to win this one. And I think Lockdown does it so... It's so much more punishing because there's so many more ways that you can lose in this one. Nemesis Lockdown's biggest difference between the original feature is that it adds these tokens that are called, what are they called? Contingencies, these contingency tokens. So these tokens are going to give some reason. They're there on the left side. 1 second, Dan. I'll be right back.
Oh, sorry. You're screaming. Okay, yeah, there we go. I'll just fill in the gap here. Let's see if we've got any comments in the comment section. And apologies for any connection issues I may have. My internet isn't the best, and I make do with what I've got really. Oh, there we go.
Sorry about that. Had some angry puppies on the other line. Whew.
No problem at all.
Hopefully there should be no more shrieking. Sorry about that. Right now, currently puppy sitting, but now they're eating. They should be fine. Sorry about that quick blip. But as I was saying, there are some new endgame conditions here in the form of contingencies. Essentially, the company has invested into this base that's on Mars, and they're going to blow up a certain subsect of people. And if you don't do this condition, you're gonna die. And there's 6 different conditions potentially. One of them is that no one dies. Cool. Awesome. Never will happen, but cool. Could happen. Everybody that's too dumb will die. Everybody that hasn't communicated with the company will die. Or everybody that's in an escape pod will die. So one of those things is going to happen. And at the start of the game, you get one piece of that information. Everybody else also has a piece of that information. So you can talk to people. You can negotiate with them. Try to get that information information as to what that other objective you have to do can be. But here's the twist: there are multiples of some of these objectives. And so you know that you potentially have a small piece of the puzzle, but you're always making a risk when you decide to do something or not do something in this game. So it's very scary that you always have a way that you can potentially die, even if you do everything else perfectly. And that's what happened to me this game, unfortunately. I was able to complete my objective. I lived, I escaped the Martian base, but the contingency killed all the characters that didn't complete this small objective of getting your knowledge up to a certain level. And I had one of those as the one that I had seen. So I figured that, the odds are that it's not going to be something that I need to do. Still died. So unfortunate. I thought I did it so well, but everyone died in the game. And Lockdown knows that it's a more difficult version than the original Nemesis. So to balance this, they've made the characters stronger. And this is really cool because now each of your character decks, you have a deck of action cards, they're more interesting. They could do more powerful effects. You can craft items out of nothing if you're the janitor. Or if you are the hacker, you can program your gun to auto-generate ammo, so you don't actually have to find ammo resources. Or if you're the sentry, you can force other players to do things because you're in this giant mech suit, or maybe you have advantages on all your attacks. So you feel really strong when you're playing, but the game is going to think about that as well and punish you and push you down a little bit. So if you're interested in a game that has a story that you're going to be talking about after the gameplay session is over, Nemesis Lockdown is wonderful for that. But I do not recommend Nemesis Lockdown if you have not played the original Nemesis before. I think that there are a lot of even more. So the original Nemesis was plagued with small thematic rules. Lockdown has even more of them. So be aware that is a total thing. Play with somebody who knows the game well. Otherwise, you're going to have a bit of a stumbling time as you play the system. So that's Nemesis Lockdown. Whew, what a ridiculous game.
And what's your winning percentage of that one?
I have never won Nemesis Lockdown. So I've won Nemesis, I think maybe 7 or 8 times, something like that. But I've played a lot of Nemesis. Nemesis Lockdown, have not won. I don't think anybody has won Nemesis Lockdown yet. I've played 6 times now, and no one has won Nemesis Lockdown. We've all either died from the contingencies, killed ourselves, been eaten by things, or the base has exploded and we just died that way. So many ways to die. Terrible. But super fun. It is fun to play. It's fun to just watch the utter chaos unfold.
There we go. The joyous game that is Nemesis Lockdown. My final game is completely opposite to a game like Nemesis Lockdown. This is a game that I only recently acquired, and I think it's really good. This is a game called Splitter.
Ooh,
so Splitter is a very simple throwback roll and write, back to when roll and writes were really simple and straightforward. It's got a very simple concept, but quite a novel concept where all you're doing on your turn, and you can see here, this is 1 out of 5 weight. It takes 15 minutes to play. All you do on your turn is that you roll a pair of dice, and then you write one side or write one of the numbers on this sheet here. Just wait for the picture to load up. So yeah, you just write one of the numbers on one side of this sheet. Like, say for example, I rolled a 6 and a 3. If I wrote the 6 here, I would have to write the 3 on the other side as if it was mirrored. So basically down the middle here, you've got this like dotted line, which acts as a symmetrical line, basically. So again, if I write something here, I'll have to go directly on the opposite side. Or if I write it on the far side, I'll have to go on the other far side. And all you're trying to do is you're trying to create sets of numbers or groups of numbers of the same type equal to the size of that number. So you want 1s to be on their own, you want 2s to be next to 2s, 3s to be next to 3s, or 3 3s, 4 4s, 5 5s, and so on. And then you get points based on how many times you do that. So each set of 3 is going to give you 3 points. And then you're going to keep going until every single square is filled, and then calculate points. That is the whole game there. This game is so good. It's way better than it should be. It takes about, again, 10-15 minutes to play. Extremely satisfying. And it squeezes you down. You start off thinking, oh, this is going well. Then all of a sudden you start rolling numbers you didn't want to. And then that starts ruining the other adjacent numbers because, even if you have 5 5 next to each other and there's only one space next to it and you roll a 5, that's going to make that 5 a group of 6 now, which means it's not going to score, which is obviously going to be frustrating. But because it's so quick, it doesn't even matter. And again, any amount of people can play this. It's just a blast, really, and I'm massive. It took me by surprise, and I'm enjoying it a lot, and it's hitting the table. So that is Splitter. If you want a very simple roll and write game, this is one to take a look at. Any interest with this one, Mackenzie?
Yes, this looks great. I assume the solo mode is you just high score, try to meet a certain point threshold. Yeah.
I think so. I've not played it solo yet,
Mm.
actually. I've not looked what the solo rules are, but I imagine it's beat your high score kind of thing, yeah.
I could see this being a game that I just plop up and just play for hours, like, or even for minutes. Like you could, I'm sure you can just knock out a game this very quickly.
Oh, yeah.
How
Yeah,
fun!
solo.
The symmetric faces. That's such a cool concept, and it looks like there are a variety of different sheets. When you play the multiplayer game, does everybody play on the same sheet, or is that going to be different too?
Yeah, you all play from the same sheet, yeah. And obviously you'll be writing the same numbers down, but
Mhm.
it'll very quickly start to differentiate where people place things. I've only actually played with the I think there's two different sheets. So there's this sheet here which I haven't used yet, or there's a simple one here which is kind of this shape like this, and you can see there's like a little star symbol, and basically if you get points or a group of numbers there, your points will be doubled. So you won't really want to get a big group of 6 there to double it to 12
Yeah.
points, and that's the two little twists on the game. The rest of it is as simple as it gets. But that mirror effect I've not seen before, and yeah, it was interesting, quite a novel little concept.
This is really good. This is something that I look for in roll and write style games. A lot of them do share mechanisms. Like, yes, it's a tetromino. Yes, it's this thing. Yes, I understand. This I've seen this before. This is cool. It's so distilled. It's so simple. I can see why it's
Yeah.
getting played so much. How fun!
Yeah, and I think in the UK it costs about £8. So I imagine in the
Yeah.
UK, US it's like $10 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So absolute steal
Wow.
at that. And I think even if you only play it, 10 times, it's going to be your money's worth. That is Splitter.
Wow.
There we
Awesome.
go. That's things that we've been playing. So a good variety there. So some heavy ones, some
Mhm.
ultra light ones as well. Okay, so let's move on to the news, or if a news piece we want to mention. Mackenzie, was there anything you wanted to talk about?
Yes, the big news item that I wanted to talk about was a partnership between Ravensburger and Awaken Realms. And this was going to bring us the new deluxe edition of Castles of Burgundy. Not the old deluxe edition that was by Aaliyah that gave us a kind of deluxe edition. It was a little bit of a combining of all the expansions and introducing a new one. This is the ultimate deluxe edition, an entire stretch goals box, huge miniatures, something that we never thought would be the next step for Castles of Burgundy. But as Dan and I were talking before the stream, we'd be lying if we weren't going to back this. Like if we said we weren't going to back this. This is a awesome game. Incredible game. Castle of Burgundy is wonderful, but does it need this additional treatment? Is this something that you're excited for? Why are they putting miniatures in a game like this when it's a tile-based system? It makes sense to me why they would do so, but wow, like I think this is the opposite of what I was expecting for a deluxe edition for a game like this. But it does look pretty. It does look cool. I'm curious to see what expansion content is going to be added, what new things are going to be created for this, and what kind of numbers this pulls, because this is a beloved game. I for sure am going to be getting this. How about you, Dan?
I think I will be getting it, but the only thing that concerns me is the miniatures. Like, why does this game need miniatures? It just needs it could do a very nice deluxe version with just lovely tiles, a thick cardboard, nicely illustrated. This game it literally does not need miniatures. I mean, I say that about a lot of games that do have miniatures, and this one I can't even think of a coherent argument why it would need miniatures. So I don't get it. I think it's going to ramp up the premium too much. But if it's got extra content, if it's got some stuff that is going to make the game better, and if it's at a sensible price, then I still could be tempted. But I just wish there was a version with it that you could get the nice tiles and things. Maybe something like a Glenmore 2.
Yeah.
But without plastic, where you're just going to put a tile down and put a building on it just for the sake of it. It doesn't mean anything at all. But I don't know. I'm a bit alarmed about that. But I know it's nice to see because the actual artwork here is fantastic.
The other follow-up question I had for this was, what unlikely pairing do you think could result in something similar to this? A game that you're just like, oh, I did not expect this is going to happen. Anything off the top of your head, like, why did they do this? Or like, what is going on?
What you mean, like the ultra dry Euro with a
huge miniature stretch goal box, crazy.
Oh, well, I suppose I've got so many dry Euros. You could do this with anything in my collection, really. I mean, yeah, like you make well, to be honest, it doesn't really get any more polarizing than this, does it? Like any Stefan Feld game of miniatures is just mind baffling, really. So yeah, I think this is just as big as it gets, really.
Maybe some like small filler card game, like a Colorado Deluxe Edition with like chameleons that hold the cards or things like that. It's like this big fold-out case that you got to put stuff on.
Yeah, I suppose
Oh
you
my
wouldn't even need
gosh.
cards. You just get little kind of comedians you draw from a bag.
Oh
And
my
then
gosh,
control
that'd
them.
be so. That actually sounds awesome. I'm not
It
gonna
does
pretend that
actually.
doesn't sound cool. Like a bag pulling. That sounds
Yeah,
fun.
that is actually quite cool. What would you be willing to pay up to for this one?
Well, I'm gonna buy it. I'm gonna get the all in. That's
Okay.
gonna happen. So sky's the limit, I guess. But let's go with Tamashi. Recently, did their all in was like 120 for everything. So that's quite a lot still. But I think sure. I'm imagining that it's going to be about 145 for everything
Yeah,
from the Wicked Realms,
I was
US
hoping it
dollars.
wouldn't be. Hoping it would be that much, really, because I mean the base game of Castle of Burgundy was kind of famous because it was so cheap.
Yeah, it was like
Like,
$25. Insane.
yeah. In the UK, you can get it for about 20 quid, which is
Hmm.
mad. You can't get many games like that at all. And the game is fantastic. It's like a full-sized,
Hmm.
proper 90-minute Euro, which is again, you very rarely get those for £20. And the idea of having the exact same game for an extra 100 quid, it just, I don't know. I
That
don't know. I will
stretch
have to
goals
wait and see.
box. All the
I know.
I'm just picturing mini expansions galore. I hope that they're able to make it so that it's easy to plug and play them, like the Glenmore 2 Chronicles boxes. I hope that it's something like that where you can easily identify it, put it in, plug it, play it. So I think that it will get this game played even more though. So I'm excited. I can't pretend I'm not excited, and I can't pretend that I'm not going to get it. I'm super excited. This is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not 100% sold on it, but I'm open to the idea of getting it, I suppose. But like you, I don't want it to be too bloated where we're getting to the table where there's too much stuff. So it sounds great. That does actually against getting out, which
Hmm.
is the last thing I want. So we shall see. Because I'm actually happy with the original Castles of Burgundy anyway. So I don't know. Anyway, there we go. Castles of Burgundy Deluxe. I wanted to cover something very briefly, just because I thought this was a super cool theme of a game that's coming out. I don't know. I'm quite a big fan of classical music. And there is not that many games with the classical music theme on it, and there is one that's been around on the hotness for a week or so. This is a game called Lacrimosa, and the idea of this one is that you supposedly sing Mozart's, very it's got some deck building to it as well. So I'm not so sure about the mechanisms or how the game works, but the theme itself, and it's rare that happens. I always say I'm not a big theme guy, but when a theme appeals to me like this, it's going to give it that extra nudge to maybe take a closer hit. So intrigued by this one. There's not much information about it at all, other than a pretty cool box cover. It's weighted at 4.33 here, which I'm not sure is going to be the case. And it's published by Devere as well. And Devere makes some really good good productions and have made some good games recently. So that's it, really. I just wanted to put a bit of a spotlight on that one because I thought it was quite a cool idea. That is
This is so cool.
Lacrimosa.
I like how they are focusing on just a single piece. Like this is the creation of Requiem, which is awesome. I think that's such a great deep dive that opens up. Maybe you're working on specific measures, different types of accompaniment, different arrangements of musical groups. This opens to a lot of creativity in pairing theme with mechanisms and hopefully some things we haven't seen before. This is exciting.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Very specific theme, as Mackenzie said, but that really appeals to me. So that is Lacrimosa and Castles of Burgundy Deluxe Edition, which is what we talked about on the news. I did just skip past our crowdfunding segment, so we'll just backtrack and talk about some crowdfunding projects that we may be interested in. As always, I've got nothing, so I'll leave this one to Mackenzie if he wants to talk about a project that he's interested in.
All right. My project doesn't come out for 3 days, but it's the one I'm most excited for. As we discussed on the previous stream, it's my nomination for Game of the Year from last year, and this is going to be Sleeping Gods' standalone sequel. This is Distant Skies over on GameFound. This is standalone, so you do not need to play the first one. There are some huge differences in the mechanisms when it comes to movement, when it comes to combat, and I think that's extremely exciting because I do think the original is the perfect exploration game. It's my favorite in that genre. It's inviting and it gets you wanting to just play turn after turn after turn after turn until unfortunately the game ends. So I'm excited to see what they do with Distant Skies as they're taking you away from the ocean and bringing you into the air. This offers an entire new venue of discovery in this wandering sea world, and I'm excited to see what it becomes. It's the other half of the world. I'm excited. I think that there's a lot of great additions that they're bringing over from some of the expansions. It looks like they're introducing new tokens and items that'll have effects that you can bring with you and carry on. But they're still keeping the core system of exploration, the characters, the upgrading the characters, as well as the item cards that'll populate your area. So excited to see what they do to change the turn structure, the different combat mechanisms, and the new movement of the airship. Excited for Distant Skies, and I think that if you have not played Sleeping Gods, this is a great time to get in on it. And this seems like it's just a change, and hopefully it adds some improvements that I didn't even think it needed. So I know a lot of times on second editions, they streamline themes that you didn't even think needed to be streamlined, but you're just like, wow, I couldn't believe that it could be improved on even more. You hear this a lot when it comes to like differences between Caper and Caper Europe, or in Camel Up, there are a couple of little changes that they changed in the first and second edition that are just welcome additions. Exciting! I can't wait for it. Are you going to get it on this one, Dan?
I won't be. No, I'm still not sold on this one being right for me. But is this going to be more of the same kind of thing, like tailored towards the same audience, the same people who bought the first one? It's not like made simpler or something more accessible, like a Jaws of the Lion or something.
It looks like there's going to be more to manage. So the airship itself has an additional track that you'll be moving around. So I think it is going to have a little bit more mechanisms tied to specific aspects of the game on the crew management, the movement. There are additional abilities. Additional things you can buy though in this campaign. You have the original game that you can get, of course, with all of the Kickstarter editions and extras, but there's also a small entry point game if you want to try that. So you have a small set of characters, I think it's just 4 characters, and it's a shorter mission that's going to take maybe an hour or 2 hours. So that might be an option for you if you just want to try the system. It was originally provided as a free print and play to backers of the original campaign, but now you can get an actual physical version of this experience. So maybe that's something you look into if you just want to try out the game system and see if it's for you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, another kind of game that seems to be absolutely blew up last year. So again, why wouldn't they make more stuff for it?
Yeah.
And it's interesting. He's even still inspired to do more because I understand there's hours and hours of content in the original version, and people can't get enough and want more content for it, which is obviously a telltale sign for a quality design. So there we go. More stuff for Sleeping Gods. Okay, so let's move on to component appreciation. So this is where we talk about a specific component from a board game for a reason, and talk about why we like it. Like that reason could be anything. So I will back on my mind because mine's pretty simple. So mine is from a game called Concordia, which is one of my favorite games ever, actually. A very simple game that I've played a lot. And the component is a game called the Console Card. And this card basically allows you to purchase cards from a card row without paying an additional fee. So normally, whenever you're buying cards from this card row to add to your hand of cards, which will not only give you new actions and also give you scoring, basically a scoring object to work towards, you normally have to pay a fee the longer they are up on this track, because again, the longer you neglect things, the cheaper they get. So again, things slide down by default as more and more cards are purchased. But this console card, I don't think I have a picture of it exactly, lets you cut right to the chase and ignore those additional fees and purchase the exact card you want without paying those additional fees, which are pretty significant because it costs the most expensive resource, which is the cloth resource. And I recently played a game of this with my gaming group, and we had a really good game of it as usual. And normally I go down a certain strategy where I don't do that. This time I did utilize that card time and time again, and it really did pay off for me. And I'll probably be doing that again, or at least trying to be pulling that off again when I next play Concordia. So yeah, that is the console card for Concordia. Do
I
you
really like
you
the
click on
console card in particular because it gives you more options to buy more cards. Because normally the only way you can buy cards is through the diplomat. It lets you buy 2 cards at a time, but as you mentioned, you got to pay the associated costs. Console
Yeah,
gives you an additional option to dive down more specific routes. It means that you're getting more end game criteria than others, but as most games have, you're trading off your position on the board for more end game cards. But that also has another trade off where the more you play this, the faster you're speeding up the game. So you're getting more scoring, but
yeah,
you're not doing as much on the board, and the game is ending more quickly, and it's your fault. So I think it's really cool that you can balance that. So I really like that. It's a
yeah,
great choice.
yeah. It's also paired with quite a good scoring criteria as well. This is
Hmm.
not one of the bad ones. I think it's the one that relates to all the different types of buildings or
Different
something.
types
I
of
can't remember
cards.
exactly, but it's definitely a good scoring card. So there's literally no negatives to have that card at all. And
Agreed.
yeah, love it. There we go. That's the console card. What's your one, Mackenzie?
All right, so mine comes from the game For Science. This is a real time cooperative game where you're using building blocks to create vaccines to hopefully create the ultimate universal vaccine and cure the world of all these issues. Now, this one in particular is the character card, and it's called Play as a Scientist on TV. Each person is going to pick a role that they want to be, and my friend Levi, that I played with, I want to give him a shout out here. He played with me and he chose this character because the effect sounded so interesting, and it was. So, the effect of Plays a Scientist on TV is you can add extra blocks to your designs to build things. So this game has you pairing blocks and using them to build these vaccines. And each card will show you what materials need to be placed where in order to make different patterns. And this, you can play it in many different ways. You can lay it on the table, you can play so that you actually have to make a stack. And we played on the version where you have to make a stack of these blocks. Now, sometimes when you make these lines of cards, as you can see on top here, you're going to put yourself in situations where, ooh, this is not going to happen. There's no way that you're going to stack these 18 blocks on top. But if you scroll down there a little bit, Dan, you can get some real cool creativity here. So when Levi started constructing these, he would make them in specific levels, and he would have these creations that just couldn't be a thing without his special power. And I love that. He would use these large yellow blocks in order to be counterbalances or to just be stands to make things work. It was so cool. So I just wanted to give a big shout out here to Levi, his ingenuity on using this card, and the designers of the game for creating a card that can allow for something like this. I thought it was so awesome. And that's one of my favorite parts about For Science are the different characters that you can choose. So cool. I love it. So awesome.
Cool. Yeah, very different approach for a cooperative game to have a physical building thing. So um, I think we're talking about games that were unique on our previous video we
Mhm.
just recorded about the Dice Tower nominations, and we were both discussing that this would have been a good candidate for that. So there we go. For Science. Interesting game because you don't really hear too much buzz about this one at the moment. Do you think this one's going to blow up a bit more as time goes on?
So the only reason I even know this game exists is from No Pun Included. This was their Game of the Year their Game of the Year. So they put out a
Okay.
video on it, and I generally trust their opinions. Over time, I found that my opinions on games followed pretty much into line with their thinking, even if I took a little while to get there. And with my positive experience with Bullet and the real time situation there, I figured, this must be a quality game, and it is. It is very fun, very different, and I love that they are using a lot of these fourth wall breaking mechanisms, as you see here, and just how many cool things can come from that. So I think that this is an awesome design. Same designer as Spirit Island, actually, and you
Yeah.
can tell in the construction of the game because there are a lot of choices that make it so that you can play it how you want to, and I love that. I think this is a wonderful game.
Okay. Cool. I will take your word for it. Then we move on to the next segment then. So we're going into this or that. So this is where we compare two things in the board game space and decide which one we think's better, and try to give some justification for that. So we actually forgot to put the question up from the last episode. So we haven't got one to discuss from that one, but that's no issue. But we will put a new question up onto the community tabs of supposed to be my YouTube page. So be sure to put your vote in. And the question this month or this episode is going to be game related. So what game do you think is better? And these two games are often very closely compared to each other. You rarely hear one discussed without the other one being mentioned. And this is Calico and Cascadia. So Calico, well, there's some similarities between these games, and there's some pretty distinct differences as well. I think the best way, which I've heard it summarized before, is that Calico is a restrictive game, and Cascadia is an expansive game where you're not so restrictive. You can create new opportunities as you go. Both puzzly style games, both very accessible, both tile placement games. Again, a lot of shared DNA. Mackenzie, what are your initial thoughts on what do you think is the better of the two? If you've played both, that is.
So I've played both of these games, and my choice is actually going to be Cascadia. Sorry, Best of Star Trek. I think Cascadia is a game that I'm going to gravitate towards more, mainly because of the scoring criteria. So the way that the scoring criteria in these two games, you have all of these cards that are up in the center, and they're things that you're working towards. In Calico, there's specific design patterns. In Cascadia, it's the same thing, but they're all based on a specific animal. The thing that I like more about Cascadia is you're always building towards these things, whereas in Calico, you're always setting up for these things. So in Calico, you have these decision points and you're saying, okay, I need to put this here because it satisfies these conditions. I can use this outside of the board to do so as well. But you may get to a point where it just doesn't happen. You've missed the mark on a piece of criteria, and you have these set pieces on your board that if you do not score them, it's going to be a hefty amount of points that you've lost. And so the scoring criteria in Calico is set, and you must follow through with those, or you are going to perform poorly. And the tile draw is pretty important to that. And this is a game where you can look at somebody's board, find what they're looking for, and take the specific tile and completely ruin their game. That's a thing that you can do in this one. In Cascadia, you have a lot of options when it comes to which paths that you're going to be scoring towards. And the greatest part about it is you can pick a variety of paths. You can score for each different section here, and I really enjoy that. So I think that the openness of the scoring in Cascadia is what's going to make me lean towards it more. But I think that the reliance on looking for specific patterns in Calico is what's going to prevent me from getting it. We have Cascadia in our library, but we do not have Calico for these reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much completely know what Mackenzie said there. I do like Calico. I think it's a very good game. Cascadia did again fix those problems for me because they're basically light, breezy games, and Calico feels so punishing at times because you build towards so many different things. You're juggling lots of things at once, trying to score everything optimally. One placement can just cause carnage, and then everything's gone, and then you all that wasted effort. So I think maybe that's sometimes the player's fault because they try to bite off more than they can chew and try to achieve so much rather than sacrificing other things. But at least with Cascadia, you have that contingency at time and try something different if things aren't working out. And there's always good options, and it's a more kind of positive feeling game, I think. But I still think they're great. I think they're both very solid games and can understand why they're successful. But like Mackenzie, I would choose Cascadia over Calico. But I'll be interested to hear what you viewers think, because again, both been very popular over the last couple of years, and rightly so, I think. But what do you think is going to be the vote, or the outcome of the vote?
I think I have to agree with Best at Star Trek here. He says Calico is the more crunchy experience, and I agree with that. And I think that's what's going to prevent it from being the game that people gravitate towards more. In Calico, you do have to look at every single piece of scoring criteria that's public as well as on your personal board and factor that into every single decision you make. Whereas Cascadia's scoring conditions guide you into specific paths, but still give you a choice to break from those paths. So I think for its approachability, I think that Cascadia is going to take this one. But I think that the challenge is going to be, if you're looking for something more challenging, I think that Calico will be the one that you'll gravitate towards.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you go. We'll put that vote up on the poll anyway on the community page. So be sure to put your vote in and let us know your opinion either way. So there we go. That is this or that, Calico or Cascadia. Okay, so let's move on to the next segment then, which is going to be mechanism appreciation. So this is where we talk about a particular mechanism or a part of a game that we enjoy, and explain our reasons why. It can be as small as you want or as a significant part of the game as you want, because there's always new inventive things and interesting things that games include. So Mackenzie, what have you got this episode?
So my mechanism I want to talk about is for Dead Reckoning. Dead Reckoning is a card crafting pirate 4X game. Where you're going to be moving around, controlling islands, upgrading your crew members, and getting the most gold to win the game by satisfying a variety of different objectives. And my mechanism I want to talk about in particular is what's known as pirate mode. At the end of each of your turns, you can raise your black flag and set up pirate mode. And when you do this, whenever anybody goes into your space, they must stop movement and fight you. I love this. Such a cool option, because normally to fight somebody, you have to play a card that says, hey, I'm attacking you. But if you have pirate mode up, you suddenly become sort of a target, but also a nuisance, because now everybody has the option to go and fight you for free. But if you set up pirate mode, maybe you are trying to bait them in. This is such a great choice because it is all player driven, and it is directly interacting with all of the other people at the table. The other really interesting thing about the pirate mode is that while you have pirate mode up, no one is allowed to interact with the island that you are stationed at unless you have been defeated in combat with that pirate mode up. And that is so cool because you are setting up a defense and you are the defense. I love this system. And one of my favorite parts about this game is the area control. I think it's so well done because it's so important. You need to have islands under your control so you can dump stuff off of them and then pick them back up to gain more actions. And by able to use yourself as a shield and protect these specific islands, you are limiting the options of your opponents or forcing their hands to try to have you at combat. Love this mechanism, and it's such a simple token that you just slot onto the pirate ship, and it's just implemented extremely well. So that is a pirate mode for Dead Reckoning.
That sounds super cool. Just love that, like pump your chest out and people to come and fight you. I love it. That's brilliant. I've never ever seen that done before. And yeah, very cool idea. So how big is the kind of like region where you do this? Like what's the biggest, like what's the portion of the board that actually influences when you
just a single island like this location here. You would put up your flag, and anytime someone enters that space, so it immediately puts this danger zone on the board that if you go through it, you got to fight. It's going to happen, but you can always go around, but it takes more time. So maybe it is better to go through, but you always have that risk of combat as well. I think it's great. I really like this.
Yeah, and you purely do that to stop people from guessing what's on the island, to try and prevent them from doing what they want to do.
There's a variety of ways you could do that. Maybe you do it to prevent somebody from exploring past you. Maybe you do it to prevent people interacting with your island. Or maybe you do it because you just want to fight, because fighting is pretty lucrative when it comes to resources. When you fight, some of your bullets, some of your cannons will hit for victory conditions to actually win the fight, but some of them will hit into resource production areas. Maybe you're knocking off pieces of the boat, or maybe you're knocking off their plunder, and you're always generating something usually when you're fighting. And fighting is a great way to gain resources in this game, especially if you're out in the middle of the ocean.
Cool, yeah, makes sense. I love that idea. Yeah, love it. Encouraging the fighting and just like kind of, yeah, surrounding it or just defending an island. I love it. It's brilliant. Really good idea. Okay, so my one is something that's from a little known, actually, one that's not known about too much. I only played this one recently. This is an older Kramer and Keesling game called Nauticus. So Nauticus, I suppose, nautical themed game, after speaking about Dead Reckoning. This one is very interesting, actually, and there's a lot going on in this game. I'm not going to talk about everything, but one of the things this game does is that it uses a similar mechanism to something like Puerto Rico or Race for the Galaxy, where if you take an action, everybody else gets a follow-up action that isn't so good. Or in this example, the person who selects action gets a bonus, like points or extra workers or stuff. But the cool thing, the mechanism I want to talk about in particular, is that each round you're going to start with some of these negative point tokens. So you can see here, just about here, they've got these tokens here. There's a -1 token, there's a -2 token, and there's a -3 token. Whenever it comes to a time where you can choose to take the again, that follow-up action when someone selects one of the action tiles, you can actually choose to force that in order to flip over one of your negative point tiles and not suffer those negatives. So I quite like that idea of, what's going to be the net gain here? Is it worth me taking this follow-up action and getting the use from that tile and basically getting more turns? Or is it worth me, I'm going to flip one of these negative point tokens face down and not worry about those negative points again? Which one's going to benefit me the most. So it's one of those things that didn't really need to be in the game, but I think the fact that it was in the game is good, is a positive. And it just added that extra little decision of, you know what, I would ideally like to use that action, but I don't need it that badly, and I'd rather get rid of the negative points, because that could ultimately influence who's going to win the game. So that's it really. I've never seen it used before, and I'd love to see it be used again. So that is
I
the
really like
negative.
this.
Yeah,
It
it's
reminds me a
interesting.
lot of the multiple choices for following in Boon Lake, of all things. Best of Star Trek's actually mentioned it here, taking turns on other people's turns. And there's levers that you can purchase where you can forego the follow action to instead perform a supplemental action. So you can gain some money or get some base tokens. I really like that because you can think to yourself, this isn't going to be as beneficial as this other thing. Or maybe if you wouldn't benefit it from as much, you're not in the position to, you have that backup option. So I like this. This is cool.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually, I didn't think about that with Boon Lake, but yeah, it is almost similar to that. But yeah, very simple, but it works. It works for what it is. So there we go. That is Nauticus. Also a good game that again nobody really talks about or knows about. Okay, so then moving on then from our mechanism appreciation on to our random game. So this is where we click the random game feature on Board Game Geek and see what we end up with, and just share some initial thoughts. So I'm going to press the button and see what we end up with. Mackenzie, as always, not an educated guess, random guess on what you think is going to.
A game from before the 2000s.
Okay, I'm going to say something involving dice.
Something that has to do with
here.
paper.
Yes, something with So I've got the name here. Just taking a time to. This is a game called Hoax, but I don't have a clue what Hoax is. Oh, here we go. Back to 1981.
Hey yo,
Hoax.
nice.
This is actually.
Hey, this might be one of the highest rated games we've seen on here.
Maybe, yeah, it might just be. So this is described as bluffing your way through. Bluffing your way through, be the first to deduce your opponent's secret identities. Okay, so it looks like an early kind of hidden role style game. And it's 6 out of 10 isn't terrible for a game from the 80s. And it actually looks like this is a very early entry into the Board Game Geek database, because this is only number 139, so that's quite early. So let's have a look here.
This is actually pretty cool. I'm reading the blurb. It reminds me a lot of Coup. Oh, this is kind of neat.
Yeah. Let's have a read then. So it says the basic idea in Hoax is to pretend to be somebody you are not while working towards the goal of figuring out who the other people are. Each player is assigned one of 6 different characters, each with its own unique abilities, but can pretend to be any character and use its corresponding powers. Very much like Coup. Abilities are used to acquire 3 different types of goods, which can be spent to get clues to opponents' identities. Oh, I do like that. If the majority of the other players think you're pretending to be a character that you're not, you must either admit it, that you're not that character, and permanently lose the power, or reveal that you are and win the game. So yeah, very much like Coup, where you can kind of bluff and try to call people's bluff, but if you are kind of incorrect, you're going to get punished for making a false allegation. But yeah, interesting. A 1.38 out of 5 waiting, 45 minutes to play, 3 to 12 player range, so can accommodate quite a few different player counts. And there we go. This is one that I would happily give a go.
Same here. This looks really cool. I like the idea that you start the game very powerful. You can do everything, but you're not necessarily eliminated when you get called out on things. So I think that's bluffing is still really important in this game, but also calling still has that weight of like, oh, if I'm wrong, if he is that thing, they win instantly. That's cool. I like that the pressure is more on that person can win instead of I'm going to get eliminated. That's neat. It's a good flip.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So normally my problem is that these games have elimination. This one, you don't. You just get weaker. I love it. And you can still win if somebody accuses you or falsely accuses you. So yeah, absolutely be willing to give this one a go. And I wonder if this was a somewhat loose inspiration for those other games, because there are so many different games that have taken this kind of formula and tried to put their own spin on it. But maybe this was one of the one of the early adopters of it that we didn't really know about.
It looks like it's been reprinted too.
Okay. Well, there we go. Hoax. I think quite a positive one there that we're both willing to try.
Wow.
That was quite a pleasant one there.
It got reprinted in 2016 by Fantasy Flight Games.
Oh, okay. What, under the same name?
Yeah, Hoax Second Edition.
Oh,
Try to
fantastic.
impersonate your rivals, tell the truth while avoiding detection. 5.9 on this one. It says best player count is 5. Cool.
Well, there we go. I wonder what the criticisms are. Maybe we could look into them in a bit. There we go. Hoax. That was our. Next up, we have why is this in your collection? So this is where we take a look at something in each other's collection and ask why it's still in the collection, or maybe we've rated it lowly, maybe we don't like it and we wonder why the other person likes it, or maybe we're just curious because we don't know much about the game at all. So Mackenzie, do you wanna shoot? Or
yes, are you ready? So I know that this game is in one of your favorite games ever. It's Trismegistus. This is a heavy game that has you performing alchemy. Yes, it's part of the T series loosely, not necessarily based on a civilization, but has the same approach to design, where it's very thinky Euro game. And I want to know why you like this. I have heard so many mixed things about this game. You love it. There are some people who absolutely love it. There's some people that hate it. They think that it's way too complicated, that it is one that they just don't ever go back to. The teach is not even worth the gameplay that it provides. I want to know what you think. And is this something that is worth the time to learn? Is it something that you do play a lot? Why do you do so? Go ahead, Dan.
I absolutely think this is worth the effort. Fantastic. I think it's ranked 4 for me out of every game I've ever played. So extremely highly rated for me. I've never had a game that I haven't enjoyed it. And it is heavy. I mean, this is over 4 out of 5. It's not actually that complicated if you know the rules. I think the issue people have with it in relation to its complexity and stuff like that is the term used, because the game has a lot of different tokens and things, and all of them are not just called simple names. They're all called thematic names, and that for me I think has almost worked against the game in ways, because you're reading through the rules and then they're using all this, all this language that isn't natural language, and that for me normally can create a lot of confusion. What is an essence token? What is an element? All these different things, and yeah, I get it. It's all confusion. It can do, but if you just things at face value and just understand that these tokens go here, these go here, it's not too bad at all. Now, yes, this does go a step or two above games that I don't that I normally enjoy. I do like pretty simple, mid to mid heavyweight Euros. This is a straight up heavy Euro. There is extra rules here. There is some fiddiness. There is some exceptions. There are weird little, maybe unintuitive rules, but I do think it is all worth it. It is a massive brain burnery puzzle that you need to work out. But I like that. Even to convert one cube to another cube, you need to get rid of this token, and this token let you go up another track, and then you can unlock all these different things here by building rows and columns, and build an engine by placing these cards. And there's even some awkward production issues where your player board is color coded. They're supposed to match with the cards, so the yellow meets the yellow, the red meets the red, the blue meets the blue, but for some reason the black reaches the yellow or something like that. Or I think it's green, red, blue, and then black, yellow for some reason. Explain why. It's just little things like that I think have been blown out of proportion, and people have really stressed that there are huge production issues with the game when really there's very minor production issues for the game. I love dice drafting. This game has 3 layers of information when it comes to drafting dice. One of which is the symbol, one of which is the amount of dice in there, another one is the color. So again, think of a game like Coimbra and how paralyzing that is when you come to drafting a dice or die. This one has another layer on top of that as well. But I could talk about this game all day. I adore it. I think it's fantastic, and I would happily play it anytime. Sadly, I haven't played this one in a while actually, so I really do need to make an effort to get this one back to the table. But it does require a bit of concentration. You need to be in a good headspace and make sure you are paying attention, because it's pretty involved.
Okay. I have a friend that has a copy of this, so I will ask him to bring it out next time. Very cool.
I think you should. I think you give it the benefit of the doubt.
Hmm.
Again, if you like dice drafting, I don't see why you wouldn't like it. As I said, there's a few things there that are a bit different, but it's not that bad. It really is not that bad at all. And I'm sure you've played plenty of heavier games, and I think it's definitely worth the effort.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
Excited.
thank you.
I'll try it out.
Cool. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, sorry. I've got one for you then. I've got a game that is marked as owned in your collection,
Okay.
but you've rated it pretty poorly. This is a game that I've actually played, and while the man of it, I didn't think it was the best game ever. I did think it was a very pleasant game, and I thought that, well, I can certainly understand why a lot of people would like it. So this is a game called Dragon Castle.
Mm.
So what do you have to say about Dragon Castle, Mackenzie? You've rated it a 4, I believe, on Board Game Geek.
Dragon Castle is in my sell pile right now, but you know what's funny? No one will buy it because no one wants it. I even took it to a store where they were like, "Oh, we can't take those. We have too many of these. We can't sell them." I don't like that game at all. So that's not true. It's got some fun stuff, which is why it's a 4, not a 3, not a 2, not a 1. I think it does what it does. It is a mahjong style. You set up these mahjong pieces. You take pieces, you put them in your own area. It's just not interesting at all. It's very boring. The score is not very dynamic, and it's just not exciting at all. Even when you throw in the special abilities and powers, I do not have fun with it. I was recommended to give it another go with the solo mode. My friend Tia over on Takaijo, she really enjoys the solo mode of this. I did. I tried it. I was like, it's on the sell pile. I might as well try the solo mode because I haven't gotten rid of it. Maybe I'll keep it for that. Nope, still felt the exact same way. I set out different tiles. It plays the same, except the AI is even more of a jerk. And so it makes it even less exciting because you know exactly what it's going to take. Not a fan. The setup is tedious. The gameplay is pretty fiddly and boring. And the scoring is so uninteresting. I never really want to play this again. I think I'm going to drop my rating actually after talking about it right now. I probably could drop to a 2 or 3. I don't really want to play this again. It's kind of a waste of time. Feels like a really bad phone app.
Yeah, I get that. I thought, I get what you mean. It does feel quite generic in a lot of ways, but I thought it was like generic in a way where you probably wouldn't love it, but you probably wouldn't hate it either, if that makes sense. But obviously that's not the case. A wonderfully produced game. It's lovely to play with. But there we go. And no problem at all. What are you generally like on abstract games in general? Do you tend to like them or?
I like abstract games that have hidden information and that allow you to push things. So my favorite abstract game is War Chest. I think that's the gold standard, where you have pieces and you move the pieces to gain control of things, but you still have aspects of choice. You're building up a pool of items, and then there's some randomness in the way that those show out. So that way there's no set information, so no perfect information. This game has that. It doesn't have perfect information because you're going to be revealing things underneath it, but the gameplay itself is not compelling enough. And that's really unfortunate for me. Things like Azul is something that I would choose for sure over this any day. I love the way that you can position things and move things towards the center, and you can build stuff up from round to round, but that randomized draw of the bag is going to determine what is actually populating the board. I really enjoy that. And the risk between leaving things from round to round and potentially taking negative points because of those moves. That's it. The gameplay of Dragon Castle is not compelling. The decisions are not very exciting, and the scoring is super uninteresting. So not one that I ever really want to go back to. And like I said, after this conversation, probably going to drop my rating even more now that we've talked about my feelings.
Okay, yeah. Well, there we go. I can't argue with that if you feel that way. And best of Star Trek, I think he agrees with you by saying that Dragon Castle is 0 thrills. There we go. I do agree with you. I didn't find it terribly exciting, but I thought it was just it was fine. It was pleasant. I didn't feel strongly either way. But obviously you don't feel that way. So there we go. That is why is that in your collection? So let's move on to, I believe it's our last segment of the show, and we will crack on with A to Z. So this is where we talk about a couple of games, usually a lighter game, a more involved game from a letter category. This one being S, the letter S. And we share our thoughts on that game. and maybe why we like them. So, Mackenzie, what is the first game you want to talk about?
All right, my light game is for Spot It. This is a real-time game of matching symbols. However, all of the information is public, so it's also a speed game. You'll have these cards that are very unique in how they function. Each card matches every other card in the game, but only once with one specific symbols. But the trick here is that the symbols are different sizes usually. And so a lot of the times you'll be scanning a card for something specific, and then someone else will say something and that card will change and you'll have to make another match. And it's just this cycle that is so well done and implemented into a lot of different game systems. You have a hot potato system where you're trying to get rid of your cards. You have a game where you're trying to get as many cards as possible by taking from the center and putting into your own pile. Or you have games where stacks move around. There is a lot of choice when it comes to how you want to play the game, and then the game itself focuses heavily on that matching aspect. Now, one thing that I do want to mention about this game is that there's actually a way that you can make your own Spot It game. There's a website, and it's from aaronbarker.net. It's got a Spot It design choice where you can populate it with whatever symbols or letters or items that you want. I find this really cool as not only a game, but a teaching tool. I'll put letters on it for capitals or for vowels or things like that, and have my students look for specific items. Such a great resource, such a fun game, and it's very approachable. It's also language independent because you're looking for just symbols. A lot to love about Spot It, and there's a reason it's sold so much, because it is so approachable, so much fun, and has a lot of variety in how you want to customize your experience. So that's Spot It, also known as Dobble, and there's a lot of cool versions. We have one that's actually from the Louvre, and so it has all of the different exhibits from the Louvre in symbols there. So love that. So cool. Have you played Spot It? What do you think?
I've never played Spot It. You see this in shops everywhere in the UK, but yeah, I've never tried it. I've actually got a friend at work who says this is really good, but yeah, I've never played it. So how do you end up claiming the cards then? Is it like a snap kind of game where you've got to get in there quickest, or?
Yes, it is. It's based on the game that you're playing, but usually it is speed based. So you'll see the match, you'll say it out loud, and then you grab it and move it. And based on the game you're playing, you're moving it to different places. You're either getting rid of it or collecting them. It's up to you. I like the way that the game shifts though, because usually when you take a card, it covers something else, and that will replace that previous card. So your game state is always changing, which is really neat.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it sounds simple, fun, good for children, and again, interesting way to use it, as you said, for your for teaching students. That's a really cool idea. So I do like that. Okay, so my lighter game is a game from last year, actually. And I mentioned this earlier on a stream that we did with Mackenzie, talking about Dice Tower nominations. And this is a game called Savannah Park. Now, for me, I thought this would be a candidate for the I think they call it the welcoming game, which is basically the gateway game, the family weight game. I think this one is, I actually prefer it narrowly to Cascadia. I do think they're about the same, but if I had to choose one, I might just choose Savannah Park. So there is another game based on tiles. But we have this map made up of all these hex tiles, and these tiles have been randomly put up there before the game even begins. And as the game goes on a player's turn, all they're going to do is they're going to choose one of these tiles and shout it out loud. So I might say, the single rhino. And then everybody is going to take that exact tile and move it to an extra space on the board that's currently empty and doesn't have on it. Or it can't be on these flame tiles either. And all you're trying to do is you're trying to put the same animal in groups together, but also multiple watering holes in those animals. You can see some of these animals have watering holes on, because it works in like a king domino way, where your animals are multiplied by the watering holes, just like the crowns are in king domino. And that's all the game involves, just constantly moving things around in this big dynamic puzzle, putting things in groups and organizing them, and it just works. I don't know why. That's the whole game explained, and it does really work for what it does. But on top of that, it does have some little things like these bushfires, where if you have the exact amount of animals next to these bushfires, so the two bushfire, if you have a pair of animals next to those on a single tile, then they're going to be eliminated from the game end scoring. And sometimes, despite that being a ridiculously easy rule to remember, you will forget it and cock up, and that will break your big groups of animals in half and lose you a lot of points. But you can actually use it quite tactically as well, where if you have an animal that is not going to add to your group, you can put it on top of one of these trees, and then that animal, the pair of animals will die because that's the rule, but it will expose the tree below it, which will give you more points. So just a little layer there, just to add a bit more kind of tactical, or strategic play into the game. I like it. I like it a lot. It takes 30 minutes. Never had a bad game of it. Frustrating, but in a good way. You always want to improve on your previous score. And it's just a nice fun if you like kind of organizing things into patterns and stuff. I really can't say a bad word about it. That is Savannah Park.
Would you recommend Savannah Park with groups of maybe middle school age students?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Why not?
This might be one that I look into for bringing to. We have a volunteer at GameCon that's coming up soon. And this sounds like it could be a good fit for that age group. Cool. Awesome.
Yeah. Everyone's going to know what to do. Yeah, everyone likes puzzles. Everyone likes organizing things. And yeah, this game offers that in spades.
Very awesome. All right, so my heavier game for the S category is one we've already talked about as well. This is Sleeping Gods. We talked about it on the previous stream. We talked about it earlier in this video for Distant Skies, but I'm just going to read to you my rating and my comment for this, for my review. This is the best adventure game. It's 10 out of 10 for me, a well-paced campaign that has a combination of well-written story, challenging and interesting combat, and great emerging powers and abilities. It's fun and continues to be fun campaign after campaign. Absolutely love this game. I think that there is so much to love, so much to explore, and every time you play, you get to decide what you're doing. And I'll speak to it again, the abilities and the items that you'll be gaining and collecting, you grow to know them. And I think that's a huge boon for a game like this, where you are consistently getting abilities and you're consistently using those abilities. You feel like every little piece of information and thing you're getting is important, and it's just further compounded as you play. And then the big... I can't get into any spoilers here. So please, if you haven't tried this and you like adventure-style games, go play Sleeping Gods. It's amazing.
Yeah, we've talked about this game loads today. Goes to show, it's dominated so many different categories. It covers so much ground. It looks great. Offers a ton of different things. Just content galore. So yeah, it's definitely been one of the stats from last year, and seems to be a lot of people's favorite game. So yeah, what more praise can you give Sleeping Gods? Just the amount of attention that it gets. Cool. So there we go. It would be kind of criminal not to mention Sleeping Gods today. And my more involved game is more Euro in style. This is a game called Santa Maria, which is another dice drafting style game. But this one has a really cool kind of tile placement mechanism, as you are taking these different tiles with different actions on them, and then putting them on your own little player board. And draft dice from this pool, actually going to allocate them based on the pit value onto this little column board, and it's going to trigger every building in that row or column of that corresponding number. But when you do that, it is going to, the dice that you've just used is going to get locked into the last tile in that row or column. Let's see if I can find a picture here. So what that means is if you keep taking the same action, that you're not going to get the last building again, but you can use it in quite clever ways, where if you maybe you do a vertical column and maybe use all these buildings, and then you can do a horizontal column and use all those buildings, and maybe use this one twice because it's crossed those paths. And you're basically collecting resources to fulfill contracts. You're climbing different tracks to unlock, I think it's more personal dice, or to kind of be first player and things and get these end game scoring bonuses, and even building up a little engine of these tiles where each time you complete a contract, at the end of the round, you'll get a certain amount of money or a certain amount of points, or climb the tracks just passively. And it's just a very well-rounded game that's ultra easy to understand and to play, but it does offer a lot of depth. And it has that very novel, satisfying little puzzle of building up your little board. And the dice drafting is really strong. There's a lot of things you want to do. You need the tiles, you need the dice, but which one do you prioritize? And I tend to enjoy games like that. And my only issue with this game is that it isn't tremendously replayable, and each game does feel somewhat similar to the last. So I would have loved to have seen a bit more content in maybe different things to explore and different ways to use those buildings. But the gameplay itself in its own right is fantastic. So
have you tried the expansion at all for Santa Maria?
I haven't, no. I've tried to find a copy of this one. I could not find it anywhere. It seems to be very hard to get hold of in Europe. I don't know if that is still the case, but yeah, I couldn't find one.
Gotcha. Do you think that would solve the problem potentially? Have you looked into it at all?
I didn't look into it much actually because I knew it was so hard to get. But I have heard a lot of people say try it. It is very good. But yeah, I just think the availability of it is next to zero. But I don't know if it's been reprinted since. I'll have to take a look. There you go. That is Santa Maria. A couple of comments here from Best at Star Trek, I suppose, talking about his favorite S games. One is Sonar, the 2-player version, which I think is the Captain Sonar variant, a more simple version. I haven't played that one. Have you tried that?
I haven't played Sonar. Captain Sonar is the one that we gravitate towards too more.
Yeah, I played Captain Sonar, but not the actual Sonar one. And also Sumatra, which is a more recent Reiner Knizia game. I think it's about taking photographs and things. So I generally like Knizia games, but I haven't tried that one. I've heard mixed things about it, but glad to see that someone enjoys it.
I haven't even heard about this one.
There we go. Yeah, there we go. So I think that's enough just to wrap up the show there. About 90 minutes. Before we part, Mackenzie, is there anything you want to talk about, or any games you're excited to play before the next installment?
So games I'm excited to play, obviously Perseverance Part 2. I'm excited to see how that player customization plays out in the game. I'm excited to play more Super Fantasy Brawl, try out the rest of the characters. Can't wait. I've been playing a lot of Marvel Champions. The new Sinister Motives expansion came in, so I've been playing all of the characters there. Really liking Spider-Gwen, and I like the new Shield package that came into it. And the last thing, we got a potential shipping update for... Oh, what game was it? Oh no, I forget what the game was. But Architects, the new expansion for that. Excited to play some of that. That's it. Those are the things that are on the docket right now.
Cool.
Yourself?
Good. Yeah, I got a couple that I need to play. Bear Raid I picked up. So Bear Raid is like a new economic game by Ryan Courtney, who designed Curious Cargo and Pipeline. So it looks quite simple, but yeah, interested to see how that one plays out. Any other games that spring to mind? I'm gonna maybe try and play some of the bigger ones in my collection. Some ones that I haven't played, maybe some of the old Watch Your Game titles I've got just sat on the shelf. So yeah, would love to get those played.
I remembered another game, Burn Cycle. So I got the shipping stuff for that. They say that it's being handled by Quartermaster Logistics right now, so it's on its way. So that should be here soon. So excited.
Very cool. And it sounds like Best of Star Trek is going to look forward to playing Arc Nova. I'm sure you'll enjoy that one. And Economics as well.
Oh, cool.
I don't know too much about that one. There we go. Very fun. There we go then. Oh, and Bonfire as well. Definitely recommend Bonfire. I love that game. So there we go. I think that just about wraps things up. So thanks for sticking with us. Again, apologies for the delay on getting this episode out, but we get there finally. And don't worry, we're not going anywhere. We just live on different parts of the world. Mackenzie's American. I'm English. And when it's bedtime for me, it's daytime for Mackenzie, and vice versa. So sometimes it's difficult to work things out, but we will always find a way. But as always, thanks to everybody for joining us. Always a pleasure, and thanks Mackenzie for spending so much of the day with me, I suppose.
Of course. Sign Gabe strong, y'all.
Bye, everybody.